Well, I think you have a point somehow, but again, let's look at the amount of people that haven't actually collected theirs. Basically, he did say over 1 million here in Lagos left uncollected. Do you think politicians, political parties, as well as even the electoral body and maybe other bodies and parastatals that should help enlighten the people have truly done enough to the extent that we still have that huge amount in Lagos alone yet uncollected?
Well, that's a bit of a difficult question to answer. You know, how much of publicity is enough? That's a bit of a difficult question to answer. But I mean, sitting from where I am and watching the political parties, I don't think they've done enough in educating Nigerians to go and collect their PVCs. And we shouldn't make the mistake of assuming that the duty of voter education and civic education is that of INEC alone. It is not. The schools, the churches, mosques, cultural organizations, political parties, we all should be involved, professional organizations, we all should be involved in educating one another on the need for us to collect our permanent voters card, because that is our most fundamental instrument of participating in the governance process. And I really feel bad that we are not focusing on in this. I mean, Nigerians who can play a role are not playing this role. Organizations that can be useful in sending out these messages are not doing that. And we're busy, you know, blaming INEC. INEC should conduct election. INEC should educate us to come and collect our voters card. People should take some responsibility and be part of this common narrative, this common journey that we're making as a nation. And this is not about, you know, who did not do what. We should be focused on about what can we do to make it better.
Well, the political parties will disagree with you. They would say that, you know, INEC basically has left the job of voter education to them, and largely they have taken on that role. But, you know, let's not focus on that debate. Let's focus more on the debate that did not happen. It would seem that this 6 weeks also would have given politicians room and time to sell their ideas a little more aggressively, possibly. Have you been disappointed in terms of what has happened in terms of campaigns in this 6 week period?
It's a mixed bag, actually. We saw what happened in Abuja when the political parties came together and signed a peace accord before the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan. And part of that peace accord called on all political parties to, you know, mind their language, no hate speeches, no insulting speeches, fidelity to nonviolence, issue-based campaign, and all of that. That has not really happened the way one would expect. We see a lot of very derogatory, insulting messages being aired on TV, being published in the newspapers. And we begin to forget that beyond May 29, we still have a country and we're still going to be friends. And we're still going to meet each other in airport lounges and events and all of that. So the narrative by the political parties has been a little bit disappointing. I think they could do more in focusing on issue-based campaign and less of mudslinging and all of that. I do think that this period between now and the election is a good enough opportunity for political parties to do a reset of their messaging and focus on what they want Nigerians to expect from them, focus on what they want to do for Nigeria, focus on the challenges that, you know, that are confronting this nation. And the challenges are so many. And as a Nigerian, I want to see my people who aspire to lead me identify with my pain, identify with my future, and provide a yardstick for which I can judge their performance post-election. And we've not seen enough of that, and I think they should really try and focus more on that rather than wasting time on some of these infantile publications and advertorials insulting each other.
Is there anything you think that the electorate can do to engage the politicians, as it were, to make them come up more with this?
I think a lot of Nigerians are doing more. You know, you go to social media, you see the amount of interest. In few radio or TV programs that you watch, Nigerians are asking questions. Some town hall meetings, Nigerians participate. You know, in the recent debate also organized by the Center for Democracy and Development, You see a lot of Nigerian youths coming out to ask questions. We see a lot of that. I think it can also, we as citizens should also focus on issues and not on some of these parochial sentiments that are guiding some of our decisions. And it's also important to mention that I think that for some politicians, it is a lot more easier to preach hate or to focus on insulting messages than talk about policy. Because when you want to talk about policy, you need to do some research, you need to come out with numbers, you can't be interrogated on that. But it's difficult to call people names. I mean, anybody can do that. And so it doesn't take a lot of intellectual depth to do that. And so it is also important to mention that political leaders should know that they'll be held accountable if by their action and utterances they plunge this country into crisis. They will be held accountable. If not now, then certainly later. If not by the Nigerian court, then certainly by the international community. And they should understand that. Kenya is a case in point. We cannot allow the selfish interests of a few Nigerians to destroy the future of many of us.
Let me talk a bit about administration of justice. I mean, we've had elections time and again, but election tribunals, petition tribunals are set up regularly for election purposes. But then we have that again this year. But the questions as to the judges who will preside over those cases and the cases that they will leave suffering, how come these issues have never seemed to have been attacked headlong?
I wouldn't say it's not been attacked. I mean, there's been a lot of initiative in trying to balance the time-sensitive nature of election petition process and, of course, the traditional cases you have in court. I mean, it's a challenge. Democracy is a difficult process, especially in a developing country like ours. People tend to say we are, an emerging democracy. It is a difficult process, and you cannot actually rule out the important role that the tribunals play in adjudicating cases. So I think the challenge of balancing the election tribunal process and, of course, traditional cases before the court is one that will continue, one that will require a lot of creative thinking. And most importantly, when you do good elections, you reduce the number of cases that go to court. We've seen a progressive reduction in the number of cases that go to court since 2011. And so that is something to cheer. And it's my belief that as we continue to make efforts to ensure, put in places, things like the card reader, which, by the way, for me is an awesome initiative, very awesome. Things like that, helping to reduce the avenue for fraud and manipulation. Then we'll begin to reduce the number of cases, we'll begin to reduce the amount of hours and time our judges are going to spend in the election petition process, and then justice for other causes would not suffer.
All right, briefly, we need to go. Tell us, do you think the military should be drafted for elections? Where and how?
Well, Chamberlain is not an either-or question. As we speak right now, the military is deployed in 32 out of the 36 states of Nigeria. And so it is going to be a bit problematic to now say that during the election they should all go back. They were deployed in these states because there's need for them to support the maintenance of peace by the police. So they're already out there. I think the larger question actually for me is how do we make the military professional and non-partisan? The tapes we heard from Ekiti is really quite embarrassing for the military. And I think if we spend a lot of time trying to help the military to reassure Nigerians that they are going to be objective, dedicated to the Constitution, and non-partisan, there wouldn't be a lot of problem because they're in 32 states and people are not going on the street to say you need to get out of our states. We need them, but we need to balance their presence with some very clear rules of engagement that will save this nation from the embarrassment we saw in the Ekiti tapes. And I would also say that I'm a little bit worried that up until this moment, we don't see the military taking some steps in at least investigating and perhaps marshalling the people who are involved in that very disappointing activity. So I think it is important as a people that we don't throw away the baby and the water. Yes, we are not in the best, the security situation in Nigeria is quite volatile. Right, yes, we need to support the work of the police, but we need to do that in an environment where we can trust that the military are just there for our own good and not for the good of a few.
All right, Jude Ilo is the head of office, Open Society Initiative for West Africa. Thank you for speaking with us today on the program.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
We'll be back after the break. Join us again.